All right. I'm Andrew Ridgey, and this is Hospitality and Politics, powered by the New York City Hospitality Alliance. I am here with Rose Pierre-Louis, who is an attorney, which she told me before she's going to say something about, a public policy leader, founder of the Frederick Douglass Boulevard Alliance, which we're going to talk a lot about. And you also serve as the executive director of NYU's Mick Silver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research. And you're a friend and you do incredible work, and we're going to talk all about
Thank
it.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So I have the Hospitality Alliance. You have your alliance. For people who don't know, can you just tell us a little bit about the organization?
Sure. Thanks again. So the Frederick Douglass Boulevard Alliance is an organization that is both community and restaurants. And our goal is to have a clean and safe boulevard, but one that is bringing together all of the stakeholders. It's not just the restaurants, it's also the retail, and it's also the community. As I shared with you before, the FDBA really arose from a rezoning done by C. Virginia Field. So Frederick Douglass Boulevard between 110th to 124th Street was literally abandoned land. And when she became borough president, this was a priority for her. And as part of it, it was dedicated to be the gateway of Harlem and Harlem's restaurant row. And so it is flourished into an incredible neighborhood. I say FDB, as we call Frederick Douglass Boulevard, is a vibe.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Obviously, we have so many, friends and member restaurants in the neighborhood. I live not too far away. And it's incredible how, I think a lot of times when people talk about like politics and public policy, there's things they're familiar with, but sometimes it's like this big thing you have to unpack. But, as you mentioned, the former borough president, this was, a priority to rezone this area. And that public policy alone has real material impacts on people's lives and the future of neighborhoods and how they develop and evolve for, I guess, better or worse.
I think it was for the better.
Yeah.
Obviously, the conditions that were there before were not great for anyone in the community who especially had been there for a long time. The fact that the kinds of amenities that were brought as a result of this rezoning, from Harlem Shambles, which unfortunately is no longer there, which is a great butcher, to the supermarkets, to the greengrocers that we've had, to the restaurants like Melba's and Row House and Harlem Tavern and Bixie, that our neighbors can just walk outside and have an abundance of restaurants. But for me, that's what drew me in, was the rezoning. And during my time as Manhattan Deputy Borough President and living on Frederick Douglass Boulevard and understanding about the success of this rezoning, because of course in the Borough President's office, land use is a big piece of the work. That's how I really got the speck of an idea to do something that brought together all of the stakeholders on the boulevard.
Just a very basic fundamental question, like what exactly is a rezoning? Because I think there's so many different neighborhoods, there's different zones, and in different zones, you can have different types of uses. But can you just kind of give me a quick overview of like, what is a rezoning and how is the neighborhood rezoned?
So my understanding, and obviously I'm not a land use expert, but my understanding, it allows for certain incentives, bonds to develop a particular area where maybe it's low density, maybe there are some additional needs that have arisen. And a lot of times they can be really contentious. I would say for us on Frederick Douglass Boulevard, I think it's certainly been a value add. But also there are incentives that are provided to, of course, developers. Which is part of that development. Typically, their retail spaces are reserved for community-based organizations or businesses that are located within the community. That's been a model that's been used repeatedly in Harlem.
There's just such a amazing like culture. And I think the people, I know like so many people that live, work, have businesses in that area. And I think, being part of an organization like yours, you give people a vehicle to be able to, participate and, work in progress. You mentioned all the restaurants and, how you promote the area to not just people that live in the neighborhood, but, really having it as a destination for people from all over, to go dine. So I'm going to get into a lot of questions about like, what does the Alliance exactly, do? How does it operate?
Sure.
But what about your background? So you mentioned obviously at the borough president's office, I talked you up a little bit in the introduction, but
sure.
What's your background that led you into doing this work?
Sure. So I'm an attorney by profession. I was a public interest attorney, practiced for 17 years, representing survivors of intimate partner violence. So my work has always been centered around women and children. And for a long time, after 15, 16, 17 years, I was really frustrated with the civil legal justice system. Same results, not really transforming the lives of the individuals that I was representing. And I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, Madeleine Lamore. I was really depressed about it. And she said, you should be really thinking about doing things on the macro level. And by chance, Scott Stringer had won the primary for Manhattan Borough President. This was in 2005. And the chair of my board at Harlem Legal Services, and of course, Keith Wright, who was an assembly member. I don't think he was the Democratic leader at that time. Scott shared with them that they were looking for a deputy borough president of Manhattan, and connected with Scott and got appointed at a diner at 72nd in Amsterdam. People think you get appointed in these hallowed halls. Mine was in a diner, which is so Scott.
Yes, absolutely. And on the Upper West Side.
Yes, on the Upper West Side. And so as a deputy borough president, I got to work on so many different issues, from transportation to intimate partner violence to criminal justice. But the first thing I worked on was food. And we did a conference on the politics of food at Columbia, which was really an eye-opener to me in terms of my passion that developed from doing that work and some of the sustainability work that we did through our Go Green initiative, which was our sustainability initiative. And one of the things we did was a cookbook.
Wow.
The Go Green East Harlem cookbook. So from there, I learned about what was happening on Frederick Douglass Boulevard and started FDBA, started pulling.
So you're like a founder of the organization?
I am.
Okay.
I am a founder of FDBA and brought together, for me, if I would describe myself, I would describe myself as connective tissue, right? I'm always finding ways to connect individuals, not only to each other, but to resources. So pulled the community together, talked about this idea of having an alliance, right? Very similar to the Downtown Alliance, right? And there was an interest to do that. And we formed our board and got to work, from doing everything from community cleanups to annual events such as our Food and Drink Boulevard, to really being able to respond to the needs of restaurants during COVID and open streets and other types of programs.
I love the flow. I'm always so fascinated, how people, are in one place and how they end up, in another place. And when Scott was both borough president and controller, we did a lot of work. I know he had a commission I was part of to cut the red tape for small business, which was really interesting and a great program and great initiative. And, I love, of course, you meet at a diner. And I always think restaurants really are these kind of connective tissues of communities, and they're really these community anchors. And so much when we're talking about, developing an area or, giving people opportunity to open new businesses, places for people to work, it's these small businesses and so often restaurants that are really at that foundational level of, providing this type of, opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, I really think that restaurants are the fingerprint of the city and of neighborhoods as historic as Harlem, right? For me, obviously, I love to eat food, and was so lucky to be on Restaurant Row, but also what connected me to want to bring people together is many of the entrepreneurs that are in Harlem are women.
Yes.
Right? That bring that dynamic flair, new types of businesses, new types of cuisines or retail from Leah Abraham, from Satipani to Melba to Sylvia's. So many women that have been transformative. Yvette from Veneteria.
Why do you think that is? I mean, because it really is amazing. I mean, if you start walking up the boulevard and you start looking at the restaurants, so many of them are woman owned. I haven't done a count, but it almost seems like it could be, the majority, which, it's not the case in a lot of places. So what do you think it is about the community, the businesses, that it's unfolded this way?
I think that's Harlem. Women have always been in the forefront of culture, especially Black women in Harlem have been in the forefront of culture and the arts and innovation. And so to do that in the restaurant industry and in retail is no surprise. And when you really see the vision that they bring to this work and thinking ahead, right? When you think about so many of these restaurants that didn't know if people would come, but they had a vision and believed in the community, and it's part of the success of the neighborhood. And many of our owners, through the Alliance, they actually live in the community, which I think is really unique about FDBA. They're not only owners of businesses, they live in the community. So they are interested in dual capacities. So that's been really helpful for us.
Melba's always talked about that. She obviously just in general, but even on this show, we talked about like what that block was, 114th Street, before she opened up the restaurant and a lot of the challenges that the neighborhood had. And I also think part of it too, just knowing so many of the restaurant owners there who are women, my experience has been like, they just like show up. There's a lot of people that, there's a lot of things to be frustrated about, especially when you have a small business. And my experience has been like, just the business community, the small business community at large in that neighborhood, when issues come up with the Hospitality Alliance, whether it's they have to, testify at a public hearing or there's some sort of community meeting or, recently we were at Veneteria with Yvette. She hosted Governor Hochul, where we did a press conference about the new no taxes on tips law that was enacted. So it's also a place where people go and other government officials and policymakers and community leaders go to make these kinds of announcements. And obviously there's a reason they go there, because I think doing something in Harlem, in the neighborhood, is relevant, and it's important because the people in the neighborhood are important, and they show up for things.
So I would say that Harlem has a very unique distinction in a city as incredible as New York, as being a internationally recognized community that is steeped in civil rights movement, jazz, and an incredible culinary history, right? So understanding the role that women have played in Harlem, it is not surprising that when things arise, that we take charge, we step forward, we raise our hands and That's why I love Harlem. I've lived there since 2001, and I feel so blessed and lucky to be in a neighborhood where people are so passionate about their community and want to come together to do better.
Yeah. Can you talk about how you kind of personally in your role and just personally like approach the issue? Because you said like 2001. So obviously, the cities change, neighborhoods change, they evolve, especially when you're focused on, developing, getting new small businesses and really focused on culture and all of this. Like, how do you approach respecting that incredible rich history of Harlem, like you were talking about, the food, the music, the people, the politics, the list goes on, while also recognizing that like things are going to also change, So like, how do you do the balance of, we have to respect the history while also making sure that we continue to grow and provide opportunity? Because I feel like so many neighborhoods, it's not just like a New York specific thing, it's a global thing. And New York and Harlem has such a history to like manage that.
First and foremost, I say to business owners, the reason why you're on Frederick Douglass Boulevard is not because you're so hot and what you're bringing is so hot. It was because it was intended for you to be here, right? To know that in order to be successful, you have to hold dearly that reverence for the community. Those who have been there through the good, bad, and the ugly, and now what is transformed into an incredible boulevard. So that is a message we consistently drive about understanding that Harlem has to be first and foremost. You have to bring that respect. You cannot think that certain types of activities are not going to be, right? We're going to be outside. We're going to be dancing. We're going to be talking. We are going to be connecting. We have celebrations and marches that happen through the community. And I would say, quite honestly, the restaurants and other businesses that have come with the attitude that things must change because I am here have not been successful, and they're no longer on the boulevard or in the community.
Yeah.
I mean, Harlemites are smart.
Yeah.
Harlemites are not going to tolerate this. Harlem knows how fabulous it is, and residents know. That's why people come. It doesn't matter whether you're indigenous. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, grew up on Long Island. I'm of Haitian descent. For me, I, without question, know that Harlem is my home. It has been personally so enriching, but also professionally such an incredible place to be, where you just connect with people, right?
Yeah.
It's the ultimate cheers, right? No matter where you go. I know you know that, even though you know a lot of people, but everywhere you go, you sit at a bar, you end up talking to that person. They become a friend, right? It's in many other places that I've lived in New York City, it's kind of anonymous living.
Yeah. No, it's a neighborhood. I mean, I think that's what part of the beauty is, you know, it really is a neighborhood. And when you're there, you see people walking down the block and, yelling, they see someone across the street, it's that kind of beauty of being like, oh, hi, like what's going on?
You can't hide.
People, people, know each other and look out for each other. And I think that's really special. And the point too, that you mentioned before, that so many of the restaurant owners or just other business owners live in the neighborhood, because sometimes you do hear where like, business owners, or business opens, but the people that own it or run it or, overseas, or they're just not in the community. So they don't feel that same type of, connection or responsibility to it. So how do businesses like get involved? So what's your structure, the alliance? Is it a business improvement district? Is it a merchant association? What's the legal structure and how do you operate?
So we're a community-based organization. So we're a 501c3. One of the things that we are thinking about after being established, 2013 is whether or not we are well positioned to become a bid, right? And that has happened in East Harlem. And so now we're in the process of thinking about, is there a possibility to do that? Because there are additional needs like street cleaning and other types of supports that come with having a bid. So we have a board that is comprised not only of business leaders, but community leaders and those who have an interest in the success of the boulevard. And we have various committees that, from programming to, as you know, finance, because you got to make sure that your house is in order. And we've been able to do a lot of great programming, as I mentioned, during COVID, when things were pretty bleak in our community. We were able to partner with Stella Artois and do those what are they called? The igloo, the little glass houses, right? And that was a great way before outdoor dining, the early stages of outdoor dining, to be able to do that and have that strategic partnership. And that then coincided with our first open streets, which we were able to do for 5 years. But we were very successful, given also my policy background, knowing who the elected officials are and making sure that they understood about FDB and the importance of this community as a restaurant row and also a residential corridor. So it's been great to see how the board has grown and how we're thinking about things in the future, responding to the needs of stakeholders, right? There's always something going on.
Yeah. So the businesses, do they pay like an annual membership dues?
They do.
You get
Everybody
grants from
pays
organizations.
dues.
Okay.
We all pay dues. And then if you're participating in one of our programs, there's additional assessments. We pursue grants like everybody else, trying to stay afloat. But I have to say that our member businesses and community members are always willing to lend a hand, give us support. We've been doing a lot of work, as you talked about, neighborhoods changing and economic forces. We've been dealing a lot with smoke shops on the boulevard. And most recently, we had an issue with a dispensary that was planning to come, next door to a residential building and also next door to a preschool and a daycare. And we were able to bring together not only the restaurant owners, but community leaders, residents, and leaders within the daycare to be able to shut that down.
Okay.
Not that we're against it. We understand the economic benefits of that, but certainly the siting we felt was not appropriate.
Yeah.
So,
you're thinking about the retail diversity and all the different stakeholders in the community and, getting all of their input.
As I've shared with you, I call you at moments of panic when I see certain things that are happening on the boulevard, and the Alliance has been so helpful to us in thinking about how we should proceed on issues. But what we're seeing is, with economic forces and the cost of things, that many of our long-term businesses or even short-term businesses have shut down.
A lot of people always, not a lot of people, one of the biggest kind of political issues that's out there, everyone is talking about the cost of living. And so often the cost of living is framed of like an individual, family, individuals, cost of living, which is obviously critically important. What I think sometimes is on the back burner is the cost of living for small businesses, paying that commercial rent. Skyrocketing insurance costs, the cost of goods, tariffs, all of these different issues. So what are you seeing? What are you hearing? I was just talking, I think one of your board members, Susanna Coteen from Lido and
Big C and
the Fox on my board as well. She's always advocating about something. I love, the passion.
She lives in the neighborhood.
She, living in the neighborhood and everything. And she had mentioned something too, just kind of the affordability crisis, but for both, people and businesses. So what do you hear from local restaurants or retail shops in the neighborhood about, I guess, like their cost of running a small business, but also obviously they're selling, whether it's food or a product, to people in the neighborhood who are affected by cost of living. So what's the kind of...
So we're not located within a central business district, right? I say all the time, COVID may be over, but we're still experiencing the effects of that, right? Now that is coupled with what's going on in the economy, and what we hear from our residents and business owners is, for the restaurants, business is not what it used to be.
Yeah.
I'm scared. I'm concerned. I'm going to have to make changes. So, they're doing more marketing. They're doing more partnerships. They are thinking about ways that they can attract customers to come in. And certainly if things are tight economically for business owners, you can only imagine for residents,
Sure.
right? So they're not eating out as much. What we've seen, even for new restaurants, there was an exciting vegan restaurant on right across the street from Melba's that we were thrilled that came to the boulevard, and within a year and a half they were closed because of the rents. And also we're trying to communicate to landlords and to before this rezoning, there were no real estate firms
Yeah.
that were on our boulevard. Now, all of the top real estate firms, they're on the boulevard, right? Because now they call Frederick Douglass Boulevard the Gold Coast of Harlem, right? So I try to impress upon them that this is Restaurant Row. We don't want it to be a threatening place. We want to attract restaurants. That's what I talk to you about all the time, is what can we do to identify restaurants that are interested in coming to Harlem and may not be aware that Frederick Douglass Boulevard is Restaurant Row. How can we bring them? And also understanding it may be easier. I know you talk about restrictions and the distance between churches and
200-foot law.
Right. So on Frederick Douglass Boulevard, one of the biggest attractions is that it's less of a problem because we don't have as many churches as compared to Lenox or some other boulevards. So I'm really struggling with, and reach out to you and others about this, is how do we attract this, right? So what did we get? We got a Burger King. Okay, it's not really what we want. We got a threading salon. It's not really what we want. So now we are really confronted with, how do we continue to support our businesses? And obviously Open Streets was a big part of that. But also, how do we connect them to resources, which also they don't have the time to think about it. So we're going to be meeting with the borough president and other elected officials to talk about resources and opportunities, and for us to be that bridge to support.
Have there been specific programming that the organization has done in the past that have been particularly successful? And if so, like, what made them successful in your mind?
Sure. So given the unique nature of FDB, where you also have incredible residents and combined with restaurants, we used to do before Open Streets, before the pandemic, we used to do Food and Drink Boulevard. This was a crawl. It gave the opportunity for businesses to market themselves, right? They would have music, specials, culinary delights, etc. And that was really successful for a couple of years. And certainly during COVID, our Open Streets program was extremely successful, was a destination. And and attracted a lot of people. And of course, there was a lot of conversation about open streets. I just spoke to somebody who's doing a policy paper about it.
I mean, it was an open street. It was really, I mean, people from all over were coming out, and it was a party and businesses.
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, those things are also hard to sustain, right? Like, 'cause I'm also thinking just bandwidth wise, like running an organization, you know, figuring out like, what do you focus on, you know, and how do you, especially with something like an open street, that takes a lot of just managing the public space.
So as a volunteer organization, so our board, right, we don't have staff. So we're a volunteer board. So in the early days, when we were doing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it was all of us pulling the barriers, cars honking on us, cars wanting to run us over, right? And then we sort of got our rhythm, getting information out there. It's a lot to do it for 5 years and to respond to additional regulations in terms of permitting and doing that on a weekly basis, thinking about programming. Who are, you know, we have great partners like Street Lab and other organizations that helped bring life to the boulevard and energy. And of course, places like Melba's Boulevard, Enoteca, all had great programs, but it was exhausting.
Sure.
Right? While people were going to the beach, my Riviera was Frederick Douglass Boulevard, right?
Yeah.
And for our board, who spent 5 years doing that, and of course, we're very lucky to have as a stakeholder the 28th precinct. So they've been a great partner. So we're in the process of rethinking what we do with our Open Streets program, because when you start seeing things on TikTok and Instagram of people who are flying in to come to your open streets, right? We were really doing this for residents in the community who had gone through so much. We have to really rethink what we're going to do.
Recalibrate.
And I know everybody's having this conversation with their open streets as well.
I was just with people downtown the other day talking about this, and it's interesting. I mean, you've been really successful with the organization. Are there a couple of things, because there are so many other groups and so many other neighborhoods that, you know, don't have a business improvement district that help manage the public space, that help promote the businesses, that may not even have like a merchant association, but want to do something. And maybe it doesn't have to be an open street, but they want to do their own little restaurant week, or they want to put together a little guide to help promote businesses. Do you have any tips that you think have been, you know, help make your work particularly, you know, successful when you don't have all of these resources and you are, you know, a bunch of volunteers doing this for the greater good? Obviously, there's a self-interest, but also the self-interest of the greater good.
Yeah, absolutely. Strategic partnerships. I'm a big believer from my work in law. When you're doing public interest work, you've got to think very strategically and think about the people that can support your case and the person, your client, who's at the heart of your case. Certainly in the work that you do in communities, and certainly beyond my time as a deputy borough president and going on to be a commissioner, you're always thinking about partnerships because you need to leverage resources. And what we've been able to do is partner with Columbia University. Columbia helped us develop a map together with another Harlem-based organization. So we had a map of all the retail, all the businesses, all the buildings, so that our local supermarket could hand it out to residents and those coming through. We did our first nighttime farmers market working with Grow NYC, which was a strategic partner. And, you know, while a lot of other people say they started the night market, Frederick Douglass Boulevard Alliance and Scott Stringer did the first.
That was the first nighttime
market in Harlem. And so that's part of the work we do. And I have to say again, our restaurants pitch in so much. When I got the call about Governor Hochul's announcement and wanting to do it on the boulevard and being able to go to Yvette at Miniteria and for her to say absolutely and really doing that within 24 hours was really incredible. So I would also say reach out to people like Andrew Ridgie, who's always very generous. I know you're very busy, but you are very generous with your time, and certainly feel free to reach out to FDBA. People reach out to us all the time, and talk to people, talk to your elected officials, talk to policymakers, talk to your neighbors. It doesn't need to be a big thing. It could be a play street.
Tell me a little bit about like the policymakers too and the outreach. Obviously, you have a background, working in government, but what does that look like? Because someone was telling me they were interested in doing an open street, but they don't even necessarily know who to start reaching out to. And sometimes, you may have like the best intention, but you're busy running your business. You have this great idea and you want to do it, but then you don't reach out to the right elected official or the right community group. And then they feel a little bit slighted. Like, are there best practices that you've had just working with local government officials and connecting them with business owners? Because so much I think of having an organization that's going to help promote the local businesses and support them is kind of knowing who the players are that can help support them. So how have you used the organization to approach like having meetings with local government officials and connecting the business owners with them?
So again, having that experience of being a policymaker, that's one of the things that I thought was really important, to be aware of what legislation is happening, how that legislation can be helpful to you. And we certainly have worked with other community-based organizations or merchants associations that have come to us and said, can you help us introduce us to X elected official? Great example was during COVID when people were trying to get their loans, right? And everyone was having a hard time, didn't know what the process was. I've known Congressman Adriano Espaillat since, he was in the legislature here in New York, and reaching out to him and working with Barbara Askins from the 125th Street bid and Donald Notice and other community leaders. We were able to bring restaurants together and engaging UMES so that we could share information about where do you go, where can you get this loan. So really grateful to those leaders. But also, we're very lucky in Harlem. Our elected officials are walking the streets. They're walking into the community. They are accessible, and you can just invite them. Also, when we started our open street, once we became aware of it and our board was like, this is a great thing, we just went and applied for it. Then we have a very strong relationship with Manhattan Community Board 10. And we always made sure to keep the electeds abreast of what we were doing.
Keeping people informed.
Very important. So we go to the community board meeting, respond to any questions that they may have, even throughout the process. It's inevitable when you do an open street that you may get a complaint or two.
Sure.
To be able to respond to that, and certainly to make sure that people know open street's happening. These are the hours of operation. These are what we're doing. This is who we are partnering with, so that everyone is at ease. And we do that in writing, and then we do meetings for electeds who are interested. But many of them come to, it's an attraction, right? It's a destination. So we've been very successful at engaging elected officials, but I do think certainly Harlem has that a great history. We have Jordan Wright as our assembly member, born and bred in the community. You have Yusef Salam, who's our council member. We have Cordell Clear, who lives right by, Frederick Douglass Boulevard. So you run into these people literally walking on the boulevard.
Yeah, they're part of the community. They know the business owners. The business owners know them. Very, very important. So what about if you're someone who's not from the neighborhood and you're watching this or, see some of the promotion you're doing of the neighborhood? Like, what's a great way to experience Frederick Douglass Boulevard?
Certainly send us a note. We walk people through the neighborhood all the time. I do not a restaurant tour, but I love bringing people to our local restaurants so they can experience, right? People sometimes are not familiar with Harlem and they're like, oh my God, I don't know this. And then they're like, this is great. And then they meet people and then they're talking and again, making friendship. It's our cheers, right? When I think about, if I ever wrote a book, there'd be a whole chapter about Melba's, my years at Melba's and the people that I met and other restaurants. There'd be some good stories.
Oh, yeah.
But just come to the neighborhood. Talk to people. I mean, this is a neighborhood that if someone walks by and doesn't say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, you're like, you're not from the neighborhood, right? We're friendly. So reach out to us. People are trying, we get DMs all the time. Can you connect me to this restaurateur? Can you connect me to that person? And, we understand that's our role.
What do you want to do next? Like we were saying, like neighborhoods, cities always, evolving and different types of programming. You got to keep stuff fresh. If you're not doing the open street, what do you want to see for the organization, the neighborhood from like a small business restaurant perspective?
So I definitely, as I mentioned earlier, want to really think about the bid or what's the next step. And obviously, I would come to you to talk to you about it. And the bid,
that's the business improvement district. Correct. And that's where there's basically an assessment on the buildings that go and fund a business improvement district. And that would allow you to have more resources to do, beautification on the streets.
Cleaning.
Yeah.
Even though we do that, we do cleanups, we do beautification. We had a partnership with ACE that did our street cleaning through a grant. Through former council members, Bill Perkins and Inez Dickens. So what we're thinking about next, right? If we wanted to adapt our open streets programming, could it be sort of these one night only type of events, which bring the neighborhood residents out? We're also thinking about how do we respond on an ongoing basis to the needs of the community, right? So some of the challenges our restaurants are having with their roadway.
What are some of the challenges that you're hearing from restaurants? Roadway dining?
So some of our newer restaurants want to do an outdoor cafe, right? And they still haven't received their permit, right? Because I also served on Community Board 10, so I understand how community boards operate. I worked in governments. So it has been a resource for our membership to be able to come to FDBA and say, I'm having problems getting my permit. And it's now 6 months or, whatever amount of time. I know you've talked about this on previous episodes.
We're just getting some big, reforms to the outdoor dining law. But I think, that's one of the challenges too. Once you get businesses or you have legacy businesses there and they get caught up in red tape and bureaucracy, which, makes your job, our jobs just so much harder because you want them out there providing these extra seats for their guests, being able to do things that are going to, help their business, help employ people, and help create a vibrancy. And then when they get kind of bogged down in the unnecessary, red tapes and policies, it's very frustrating.
It's frustrating to them. It takes time away from their restaurant and work that trying to track that down. So we try to help with that. So those are some of the big ticketing. Noise is a big problem. And we try to support businesses and even mitigating challenges with trucks that are, unloading from supermarkets and trying to figure out how residents and that supermarket could be better neighbors, so to speak. So we tried again to be the connectors, the conveners. So I hope the next time I talk to you, if I'm invited back, that we could talk about our bid and also to think about, a big priority is how do we bring restaurants to the boulevard?
What kind of restaurants do you want to attract at this point? Like, what do you think is either, missing, or what do you think would also, complement the other, restaurants? It's funny. Sometimes we talk about how, yes, there's like the competition, but especially when you have like your own restaurant row, you have a destination. People aren't going to eat at the same restaurant all the time. So when you bring people, you bring the foot traffic. And when you become known as a place where it has great different dining options, it kind of helps all the restaurants. So what are there types of cuisines, types of restaurants that you think you need, or what would complement the area?
Great question. So I used to live on the Upper West Side on 70th between Broadway and Columbus. And on Sundays, I used to go to Luncheonette.
Yes.
Right? For my pancakes with bananas. We need a breakfast spot, right? We have Bo's Bagels on 116th Street, which is fantastic, but I'm specifically talking about on the boulevard. We have, a new business called Sprinkles, which has been great for kids, but I'd love to see a steakhouse. I'd love to see, one of my dreams is if I ever opened up a place would be like a Murray's Cheese, right?
Yeah.
Like some kind of cheese emporium or something like that. Indian food would be great.
There's been such a high-end Indian, fine dining Indian boom happening in New York. So
Caribbean food, as I mentioned, I'm of Haitian descent, so I'd love to see a Caribbean restaurant. Vegetarian would also be great as well. We have a lot of Italian. We have American fare. We have restaurants like Clay on Manhattan Avenue that have been considered for Michelin stars.
And is that something you do? So if someone reaches out to the Alliance, do you help show them space, or you can get them connected? Because so much, it's obviously if you're in the neighborhood, you're familiar with it. But if you're thinking about where should I open up another restaurant, whether it's, a breakfast place like a diner, or whether it's an Indian restaurant or Caribbean, or, you name it, people want information and intelligence about the neighborhood. So is that something that you do, or you have people to connect? Okay.
Because people have questions, right? The perception all the time about neighborhoods like Harlem is, do people have the resources, the disposable income to be able to come to the restaurant? So I just got a call the other day. There's a well-known figure that is bringing a restaurant to 125th Street. Would members of FDBA talk to him? Absolutely, right? We say, build it and they will come, right? We are a destination. If you see for the World Cup, what happened on Frederick Douglass Boulevard, I know a lot of people went to a lot of different places. For me, if you were not at the Fox or not at Harlem Tavern where I was, you were missing out.
Yeah.
It was incredible to be together with your neighbors, your friends, people from other parts of the city. So we want to continue to bring that energy to the boulevard, because we have lost a vegan restaurant. We have lost restaurants that were striving to bring us, exquisite cuisine that you don't have to go out of your neighborhood, right? We want to have it all on FDB. And I'll also note, from a retail perspective, for a long time, Harlem didn't have green grocers. Now on Frederick Douglass Boulevard, between 117th and 121st, we're going to have 3 supermarkets. All of this is changing, but we want people to understand. You got to be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
You got to engage. You got to become a member of FDBA.
Exactly. You got to always be a member. 2 quick things.
Sure.
One, what is the most fulfilling part of your job with the Alliance? And 2, what is the most fun?
The fulfilling job of the Alliance is working with members of the board who are part of the neighborhood and are deeply passionate about the community and are willing to roll up the sleeves and do the work. What we were able to achieve during COVID, I'm extremely proud of. What we've done with our Open Streets program, which every day people are like, where's your Open Streets program? Right? Very proud of. Supporting the businesses through the tough times. That to me is fun. But what was your second part of your question?
What is fun and fulfilling?
For me, I mean, I love a good brunch on Sunday on FDB, and you kind of do a stroll, do a little, hopping on FDB. I always say to friends, or we text each other and say, are you in the community? Right?
I like that.
And so I love sitting outside at Venezia. I love the blueberry pancakes at Lido. Melba's.
I'm getting hungry.
My
I
2
love their
wings.
smothered chicken there.
I do 2 wings, not 1 wing, not 3, but 2 wings.
Very nice.
And her yams and macaroni and cheese. And you could sit at our coffee shops and you will run into everyone you've ever wanted to see. Of course, a must stop is Mr. Lely with the arugula, who I'm so glad that you got to
know. He's been a member for years, and I come from a bakery family, so growing up,
I didn't know that.
rolled a lot of arugula. I ate a lot of arugula, and yes, Mr. Lee, he is just just amazing. It was so nice just to talk to him.
Absolutely,
and he has great arugula.
And it's nice and hot, and it's just
delicious.
It's a beautiful place to be, and that's a Long Island girl. It's one of my favorite things to eat.
Amazing.
So I hope you come back to the Boulevard so we can hang and chat, and I can show you and introduce you to our board members, and also, see what's happening on the Boulevard.
I will be there. We have 1 minute, 2 minutes left. And I just want to ask you a quick question. And so much I know is kind of, in flux, but you did say you're of Haitian descent.
Yes.
And obviously there's so much going on right now in Haiti with temporary protected status. So many, people from Haiti in New York, and so many people working in the restaurant industry, many of which had temporary protected status. Do you have any I'm sure this is something you could have spent an hour discussing, but I really wanted to focus on, the Alliance, just any thoughts on it? 'Cause I'm sure it's a personal matter, but it's also affects your professional work too.
So, I'm a very proud Haitian-American. It is, deeply painful as someone who is a co-founder of the Haitian Roundtable, which is an organization that works within the Haitian community, knowing the sectors that will be impacted, including the restaurant industry, health, home care, medicine, education, engineering. And I pray that something happens that can reverse this decision, because as you know, what is happening in Haiti, it is unstable, and there are whole reasons why it is, and I hope people do the research to understand why. But I pray for those families. I know that there are elected officials of Haitian descent like Pierre-Louis, Councilmember Rita Joseph, Assemblymember Rodney Bichot Hermelin, who are doing work to inform residents of their rights, and I hope something happens, and in terms of some kind of relief for them. And I know for restaurants, this is going to be a really tough period.
Yeah, it's been something really important. We recently participated in Brooklyn in a roundtable discussion with many of the elected representatives and others, mentioned, as well as small business owners. And, the strength and beauty of New York is our, diversity and people who come here for all different reasons from all around the world. And they connect with the restaurant industry and their families and contribute so much.
And Haitian food. I'd love a Haitian restaurant in Frederick Douglass Boulevard.
So reach out to Rose to open up a Haitian restaurant on Frederick Douglass Boulevard.
Yes.
Reach out if you want to learn more about the neighborhood. It's great. Thank you for being a friend and advocate for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Rose Pierre-Louis from the Frederick Douglass Boulevard Alliance. Thank you for coming on Hospitality and Politics, powered by the New York City Hospitality Alliance.
Thank you so much, Andrew. You're the best.
Talk to you soon.